today Leslie gives us a healthy alternative for some of our favorite comfort foods, and they are easy to prepare. Her tip for today will be what to look for when reading food labels. That and more, let's watch. Here's Leslie.
Hello and welcome to Healthy Eating with Leslie. I'm your host, Leslie Haas. Today we're going to talk about healthy foods that are familiar friends that you grew up with. Healthier substitutes for familiar foods. One of the things that we're going to be making today is something I loved growing up on, mac and cheese. But this is going to be mac and no cheese. I've found so many delicious recipes that allow for substitutes of dairy and cheese products, and I think you're going to love them. One of the recipes we do today is also going to be a familiar food. Instead of bacon, it's going to be tempeh bacon, and we're going to put that right into a BLT sandwich. We're going to top that BLT with, of course, lettuce and tomato, but we're also going to be making a recipe with mayonnaise. One of the first things you need to do when you're making mac and cheese, or in this case, the recipe is called Mac and Trees. It's from Dr. Neil Barnard's new book, bestseller, called The Cheese Trap. We call it Mac and Trees because it adds broccoli, which look just like little trees. So it's a very rich, delicious recipe, and part of its color and flavor, besides spices, comes from sweet potatoes. So we're going to use sweet potatoes, we're going to use other ingredients, but the first thing we need to do is cook the pasta according to the box's description or the directions. One of the things you need to do when you're buying and choosing your produce and ingredients is to buy the most healthy options possible, and the most healthy pastas are whole grain. You can use famous elbow macaroni if you'd like to make a traditional mac and cheese, or if you got the grandkids coming to visit, you can use the little spiral kind. I happen to like the penne pasta, but you don't have to use an expensive pasta. You can use the store brands, but you want to see in the list of ingredients that word whole, so that you're not really getting enriched flour pasta. It'll be much healthier for you, and it tastes, I cannot tell the difference anymore. So the first thing we do is we let the water boil, and then we're going to add the pasta. I've already put a little bit of salt in it. We're going to add the pasta, and we're going to let that cook for about 9 minutes according to the box's instructions. But before it's finished cooking, about a minute or two, we're going to add in the broccoli. That'll be like blanching the broccoli, and then we're going to drain it. The broccoli and the penne pasta are going to cook together, and then I'm going to show you how to make the cheese sauce. The pasta's almost done, and we're going to add the broccoli to the pasta water and let that continue to cook for another minute or two. You know, that recipe calls for a lot of pasta, and I choose to put a little less pasta in and a lot more broccoli. That's the beauty of these recipes. You can make it your own and go heavy on the pasta or heavy on the broccoli. It's good either way. So we'll let this cook for about 2 more minutes, and then we're going to drain it all at once, and we'll be ready to add the sauce. Okay, we're ready to drain. While that sits, we're going to get started on that sauce. The beep you heard meant that the broccoli and the pasta were done, so now that they're set aside and draining, we're going to do that sauce. And the secret to that really creaminess is in the cashew cream. We're just going to put pre-soaked cashews in the blender. I happen to be using a Vitamix because the Vitamix blender is a high-powered, you might have a Ninja, you might have a Blendtec, or you might have a Bullet RX. But this works best if you have a high-powered blender. If you don't have a high-powered blender, be absolutely positively sure to soak the cashews in advance for 2 to 3 hours. You can even soak them overnight. This recipe calls for 2 cups of non-dairy milk, 1 cup of water, 1 1/3 cups of soaked cashews. There's 1. Get every last one. And 1/3. It also calls for fresh lemon juice. I always stress that fresh is best because it's unpasteurized, it's straight from the lemon, and it's a lot healthier because it still has all the active enzymes. Fresh lemon juice. Tahini. Tahini is like nut butter made from sesame seeds. It's very rich. And it's going to give it a nice body. We also have some miso. Miso is from fermented soy, but you can get other kinds. You can get any kind of mellow miso made from chickpeas or even brown rice. Our oven is finished preheating, so this will be ready to put in the oven in just a moment. Garlic powder. The salt in this recipe is actually sea salt, but they also say that if you have any, what they refer to as black salt, to use that. There's not any black salt per se, but it's a pink hue salt, very much similar to the Himalayan salt or the Real Salt brand that I buy that's mined in Redmond, Utah. And just a little bit of regular salt, sea salt. The place that, or the way that this recipe gets its color is from the sweet potato. And rather than trying to cut a raw sweet potato, go ahead and cut the sweet potato, cook the sweet potato first before you cut it, and then you can cut it very easily and the peeling comes right off. It's so much easier to do it this way. I've already measured out the sweet potato, so we add that in. And that's it. We're going to start it, give it a whirl, and we'll be right back to show you what that sauce looks like. All right. Ho ho. This is the best sauce. It's smooth as silk. And the first thing you need to do is pour about 1/3 of it into the bottom of your pan. There we go. I'll put that down here. Spread it out a little bit. And then just drop in the drained pasta and the broccoli. Remember that I like to put a little bit extra broccoli in than it calls for. Pour the rest of the sauce over it. Remember that if you've got grandkids coming or you just want to change, you can use all different kinds of pasta. Just remember to get whole grain. You can get the twirly kind, you can get the elbow macaroni, but the penne is our favorite. And then just incorporate that sauce into all the nooks and crannies. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to top it with breadcrumbs. It even smells good already. Okay, now for the breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs are simple. Who doesn't have a spare loaf of bread or some heels from the end of a loaf of bread hanging around? When I get my loaf of bread and I get down to the heels, I will pop those in the freezer and then you can get them out and make them into breadcrumbs. It's inexpensive, it's simple, and it makes a lot of sense. Before we put this in the oven at 400, it calls for it to be covered, but I want to talk to you very briefly about how to cover your food. It's pretty self-explanatory, but what a lot of people don't realize is that aluminum foil, when it comes into contact with your food, is not good, especially for tomatoey or other dishes that are high acidic content. The easy and inexpensive way to get around that is just to put a sheet of parchment paper between the food and your foil so I've already got that ready. Okay. Here's a sheet of parchment paper to act as a barrier, and here's our foil. All right, let's put her in the oven. We're going to cook that for 17 to 18 minutes, and then we're going to remove the foil and let it go for another 12 minutes. And that nice bread topping is going to be golden brown, and we can let it sit and it will be ready to serve. Okay. Oh yeah. Here's the mac and trees with no cheese, but it's very cheesy tasting. And I think you're going to love it. Another one of those interesting meat substitutes is called tempeh, and it comes in different varieties. It's available even at Food Lion, Publix, Whole Foods, and many health food stores, but tempeh is typically made from soy that's been fermented. You can also get it at our local Food Lion in the 3-grain variety, so that means it has rice in it as well as soy. I'm going to be using the original recipe today, and the sauce for this tempeh bacon is so easy to make. It's just 3 ingredients. I'm going to be combining 1/4 cup of either low sodium, preferably low sodium, soy sauce, or my favorite, tamari sauce. You can even get tamari sauce, which is like a soy sauce, only it's been fermented longer, in gluten-free varieties. So if that's important for you or your guests, get the gluten-free. So we're going to put 1/4 cup of tamari light, it's low sodium, in a bowl. And then to that, we're going to add maple syrup and liquid smoke. It's as simple as that. We're going to let it marinate in the tempeh strips, which you'll see me cut in just a moment, for at least 30 minutes. But overnight is even better, and if it marinates for days, that's okay too. Next, we're going to put the liquid smoke in. We need 2 teaspoons of that. Liquid smoke comes at your local grocery store in either a hickory or mesquite variety. It doesn't matter which you use, whichever is your favorite. We're using hickory today. 1, 2. And the last ingredient is maple syrup, my favorite. 3 tablespoons of maple syrup. 1, 2, 3. Just give that a good stir. Put this over here. Just incorporate those. And then you can go ahead and pour it in the dish that you're going to be letting the tempeh strips marinate in. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour it in this. Let's reveal the tempeh. The tempeh comes wrapped in an inside second wrapper, vacuum wrapped, and I just put it on a cutting board, and I like to cut it in short strips at an angle. If you'd rather have long strips, you can cut it long ways, but it's a little bit brittle, so it makes more sense for me, plus they fit on sandwiches better, to make shorter strips. Some people recommend that after cutting the tempeh, that you let it steam on a steamer rack for up to 10 minutes. They say that if it has any kind of bitterness at all, that this alleviates the bitterness. I've done it both ways, and I haven't tasted any bitterness, so I don't steam it anymore. You just put your strips in the marinade, and once again, let them marinate for at least 30 minutes. The longer, the better. There you have it. Give them a flip. You could also use a spoon to really get this covered. I like to cover it and put it in the refrigerator. After it's marinated, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put it in a pan, preferably non-stick, with no oil, no fat, and we're going to let it reduce down to so that all the liquid has evaporated, and it gets a nice little brown coating on the tempeh strips, and then it's ready to eat. We'll do that next. So now the tempeh is cooking, and we've got all of the marinade in there, and we're going to let it brown on one side, and then we're going to watch that liquid evaporate and reduce, and we'll probably just need to turn it one time, just like that. But I'll let you know when it's done. We'll take another peek in just a few minutes. Another one of my favorite recipes is a recipe for mayonnaise that doesn't have any eggs in it. It's quite healthy, and it is from the Plant Pure Nation cookbook. It uses tofu and it uses cashews, and it's not chock full of oils the way most of the store-bought mayos are that are vegan. So think twice before you buy something full of oils. Read the label and look and see how easy it can be to make it yourself, as long as you get some of the key ingredients in your kitchen that are staple items. The first thing we're going to start off with again are cashews, and they've been pre-soaked, and I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of cashews into the Vitamix blender. I mentioned this calls for tofu, but unlike the sour cream recipe, this calls for extra firm tofu. It doesn't require that it's silken. So this refrigerated style of tofu, which is also the same kind that you can make into tofu cubes if you're doing a stir fry, can be used in this recipe, and it only calls for 7 ounces. So I've cut the 14-ounce cube in half. I'm going to leave the water that comes in it in the container because I'm going to save the rest of it for another use. There's 7 ounces of very firm tofu. Drop that in. The next ingredient is 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt. Half a teaspoon of tahini, and as a reminder, tahini is just nut butter made from sesame seeds. The next ingredient are 4 teaspoons of lemon juice. I prefer freshly squeezed. It calls for 1½ teaspoons of white vinegar. It calls for 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. There we go. 2½ tablespoons of agave nectar. And like I said before, if you can get the dark agave nectar, it's a little healthier than the light golden. Since 2½ teaspoons is just shy of 1 tablespoon, I'm going to use the same spoon. Calls for 2 tablespoons of water. One, 2. And then another ingredient that was new to me, it's called xanthan gum, and it's a white powder that simply acts as a thickening agent for recipes. It comes in little packets if you're just getting started trying some new recipes, or it comes in a big 8-ounce bag, which is something you'll probably want to have in your pantry. Okay, so we've got all the ingredients in here. We're going to blend it in a high-powered blender for just a few minutes until all those flavors incorporate together. And I'll see you on the flip side after I blend this up. I can tell it's very smooth. Oh yeah, this is the best mayonnaise you'll ever try. Just so you can see the consistency, it's just like mayonnaise. And we're going to use this on our bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich coming up. But we're using tempeh bacon, so it's going to be healthy, and we're going to talk a little bit about bread, and then we're going to eat. We've made a lot of good dishes today, and we're going to finish this segment up by having a BLT. But it's not going to be your typical bacon. It's going to be tempeh bacon, and we're going to use the mayo that we made, not the mayo from the store with eggs in it. We made our own with tofu, cashew, and a lot of yummy ingredients. But let's talk about the bread, because when you buy bread, or when I used to buy bread, it was tasty, and I was getting that whole grain loaf. When I looked at the ingredients, once I learned how to read labels, I found that sugar was in one of the first 3 ingredients, so no wonder it was so good. The sodium content in it was off the charts. So I beg you to read your labels carefully, and I'd like to give you a couple tips of some healthy breads to choose from. Our favorite I can purchase at Food Lion or Publix or Kroger's or even Sam's Club in a 2-pack. The brand is Dave's Killer Bread, and I should have stock in this company. I don't, but it's very healthy. The label is not full of too many artificial ingredients. It's basic ingredients, and the grains are whole. That's the thing you need to worry about, and make sure you see on the list of ingredients. You want the word whole or cracked wheat, or even seeds that have been sprouted. Another popular brand of bread that we keep in our freezer that's sold in the freezer is the Food for Life brand, no relation to the cooking classes, but the Food for Life brand of Ezekiel and other breads that by keeping in the freezer are great, especially for those of us who live as couples or by ourselves, because you don't have to worry about a whole loaf going bad. You just pull out of the freezer the bread you need for the opportunity in the meal. This bread is going to become a BLT, and here's the bacon tempeh that we made earlier. It's delicious. I'm going to just put a couple of slices on each sandwich. Maybe 3. That's why I like to make them this size. Can't forget the mayonnaise. This is rich and creamy and very, very tasty. You can also put mustard, any other typical things that you like to put on your sandwich, but this BLT with the bacon tempeh is delicious. I've already pre-sliced some tomatoes. I've got some beautiful red leaf lettuce. If you prefer, for simplicity, to buy your lettuce already prepared and cleaned, that's fine too. And if you want to add mustard, go ahead and add that on. But that is a sandwich fit for a king or a queen. Here's your healthy BLT. Bon appetit!